Hello, my friend Shannon.
Hi.
It is so good to have you here because I have been talking. Well, I have to say, it was on my way to your birthday party last year that I had the idea for this podcast. And I was like, wait a second, art and alchemy, I already have that domain. What could I do with it? And I was just
Hmm.
driving to Laguna, the 20 minutes it took there from my house to where your little thing was. And I was like,
Oh,
ding, 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 ding. It all came together. It was like a epiphany.
I love it.
And here we are. And you're finally here. So you were very much a part of this process for me
Oh.
behind the scenes.
And I remember one of our first conversations together when we met each other, we were walking on the beach and you were talking about having a podcast one day. And that was
I said
probably
that back then.
back then.
I think I wanted to do it with the other art,
Yes.
but this is so much of our conversation as friends over these last, how long have we known each other? Like 7 years or something?
Almost 10.
10 years?
Yeah, I'm getting closer to 10.
I'm in denial about time. Wow. So there's so many things I could be talking to you about today, but what I really wanted to invite you to talk about was just this change that we're in. We're moving into the year of the horse, from the year of the snake, and you have so many modalities that you have wisdom and language in, and I love how you weave them together. But in this moment, we're looking a lot at the Chinese astrology
Mhm.
because it's this time of year that people start talking about this. And I feel
Mhm.
like more and more people are talking about, I'm hearing more and more people refer to the year with the animal, even if we're not Chinese, right? It's becoming sort of part
Mhm.
of the Western language a little bit. Like the
Mhm.
archetypes are moving in, I think. What do you
Mhm.
think about any of that?
I think that what's really powerful about, really, if you think of any different shamanistic practices or land-based practices or what was called pagan, which is really people of the land practices, is there was a real way of understanding yourself through the lens of the animal world, finding a way to be a little bit more objective. It's like an aerial view, right?
Mhm.
So if you and I are talking about our lives, and we can see ourselves so personally that it's hard to see ourselves. But when we understand like an animal spirit and a lot of like underworld journeys with like shamans or different traditions that go into the subconscious realm, they usually have an animal guide or some sort of way of seeing yourself outside of yourself and seeing your instincts, your instinctual, um, protective energy that you have around yourself. And I think that we're coming into a time now with you're the fire horse. It's not an earth horse, it's not a wood horse, it's not a water horse, it's a fire horse. And I think fire in particular brings out a lot of our like base instincts. So I
Mm.
think that it's interesting that especially now that we're entering into a 2-year fire period in the Chinese chart, elemental wheel, that people are kind of like, oh, I need my guide. I need my animal. I need to understand what this animal energy is. I need a way of seeing myself, so that I understand how to respond, understand my instincts, and maybe to be able to understand how to come into the higher vibration of that response instead of going into like our base coping mechanisms, which can bring out the lower vibration. None of them is good or bad or, right or wrong. It's just what it is, and then how we're going to use that energy in a more positive way, or how we might succumb to the negative cycle and learn from it.
So for the horse,
Yeah,
when we think of a horse, or if we think of fire, like those are two different
totally.
energies, I guess we're kind of mixing in this one. What would be like a negative or more of a base shadow approach to the horse, do you think?
To the fire or to the horse?
Either one.
Maybe
Either
let's
one.
start with the elements because I think that what's interesting about the Chinese elemental wheel is that it shows the star in the center and then you have the circle around the star. The outer circle is the creative cycle of life, and the inner arrows of that star are the kind of destructive or counteracting forces. And I think of it kind of like the Earth's period. Honestly, like you have a creative cycle, this potential within our lives and in the world for things to be created, to be born, to be birthed. And then if that creation doesn't take root, we have the release cycle. And that kind of happens as women every month. The Chinese system is a lunar cycle, right?
Ah,
Based on the feminine lunar wisdom.
sure.
And so the relationships of the element is really shown in the Chinese system in a way that I think is really beautiful. So more importantly, even than the horse, in my opinion, is what element is serving as the backdrop of our collective life. And this
Yes.
particular year, we are in a fire cycle. And fire is a destructive force, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's also like we think about fires in the forest, all kinds of wildflower seeds are activated through fire. So
Mm,
initially it seems destructive, but actually fire clears the way for new growth. And I would say
mm,
that that's the overarching energy of this next 2 years, our fire years, where certain things will be shed, released. We've kind of shed. I guess I'll take the word shed and put that to the side. Snake years are very much shedding years.
mm,
Fire years are burning years, burning for this idea of alchemy, right?
mhm, mhm.
Transforming energy into something new. So it's perfect for the podcast.
Yes, and it's perfect for the card that we are going to talk about. Pull this up so we can look at it. Okay. Here we have a picture of sort of a Chinese looking star
Yeah.
sun kind of coming out the back and
Kind of like what I've got going on here
ex-
behind me.
behind you. I know, I noticed that when you sat down.
Oh, so
Um,
you can see those rays.
it's really cool because I did choose this card for you without you really looking at the card. I was like, hey,
Yeah.
let's talk about the fire horse. And I got a fire card. And now
Yeah.
it's like, oh, yeah, this is much more deep than I realized it would be. Well,
Hmm.
not surprisingly. This time it's a bright blue bottle. It has a fire inside with the symbol for fire, a little triangle, and a bird. And it says Ignis. What is your response to this?
So in terms of just the card, I mean, it's reminding me a lot of this Phoenix energy. And I think the higher vibration of seeing the fire energy is that it creates within us the ability to rise above. I think of firefighters, we think
Mm,
of all of the first responders. People often have an endearing feeling for firefighters because
mm,
there's an element of like the bravery that fire can bring out in us, right? The heroism, the heroic parts of ourselves. And I think that very aligned with the fire energy as well. Like when we face the fire, when we face the difficult things, it can actually cause us to rise above um, our circumstances. So I see a lot
mm.
of Phoenix rising above, obviously with the bird energy, upward motion. That is the highest vibration of that fire energy. If you get stuck in the lowest vibration, you can be afraid. You can bring out fear. They say that the lowest vibration of intuition is fear. The highest vibration is intuitive understanding, and then the lowest vibration is those insights you can get stuck in fear and not find the way out.
That's really
So,
interesting.
so I see a lot of Phoenix.
Yeah, I do too now that you say it like that. This white bird that's in here is often shown in different alchemical bottles in these old illustrations from
Hmm.
the I don't know, 1600s, 1500s. And sometimes it's upside down and sometimes it's right side up, so like descending
Hmm.
dove or sometimes it's Mercury. There's all different ways they can look at it, but I hadn't really considered the Phoenix before, and that's really powerful to consider. I loved what you said about the firefighters too, because I was thinking of the relief of knowing there's someone there to
Ah,
help you,
yes.
which can bring us out of the fear as well.
Hmm.
And also the relief, I feel like when I think of a fire year in a positive way, I'm thinking like it's a chance to kind of move. Like, let's get this thing going. When we talk about like get a fire under your ass, keep those
Totally.
inner fires burning. Go, go, go. We're not going to really get anything done unless we have some fuel and burn that, get going. But then, of course, the overwhelm is like, but is it all going to burn down? Well, how much fire is there going to be? So even that feels very looping in my own like as I think about, wow, the rise of possibility and getting out of the stuckness to like, shoot, what's coming? And
Yeah.
that fear pulls me right back down into, no, I don't want fire.
Well, what's interesting, and part of the reason I love bridging East-West, in
Mhm.
mythology and world cultures. My background was in intercultural communication, and I love world religion, world mythology, and I love the East-West bridging because I feel like it gives us the both and
Mhm.
especially since we're an actress, you have your own individual lines in the play, right, in the movie, and then you have the background, the movie you're in. And so I
Yeah.
think that the West is really great on helping us understand our own minds. Like we have to know our own character development.
The individuality.
Absolutely. But we need to know the movie we're in, right?
Interesting.
We need to
Yes.
know the set. We need to know the larger play. And I think in this,
Right.
we can get so focused on our individual lines and studying for our own life, right? Like understanding our own plot, character development, that we lose like, oh, this is what's happening. And I think that the Western systems are really powerful for that. But the Eastern systems, and I'm just using Chinese in this time, but the
Yeah.
Vedic traditions as well, still have intact all of this relationship with cycles and rhythms
Mhm.
that was largely lost in the West. Right?
Mhm.
When our cultures became more defined by monotheism, a lot of that land-based understanding of cycles was lost. So all that to say, with fire, I was just looking it up the other day too. The United States, born in 1776, right, is actually a fire monkey. Fire. And so if you think about
Interesting.
people coming to the United States, they often get like activated to like do new things and create and innovate
Yeah,
and
yeah,
take big
yeah.
risks. That's very much the American dream. It's very much that California dream, you know, or the New York dream, especially of like dream big, you can be
Mhm.
anything, reach for the stars. How that happens here is through fire. So it's a lot of fire activating energy. But all you got to do is go down, you know, down to Hollywood, since we live here in California, and you can see that people also like burn themselves out.
Burn out. Yeah.
Yes, California is like the land of eternal sunshine. Great, but also sometimes it's like too much sun. Like there's never a
Yeah.
break from, it's like a rat race, right? Because there's never a break from the sun. And so that's so if you think of it like that, we already live with this fire energy.
It's
Maybe that
yeah.
can lower the fear of what fire is,
That's
because
good.
that's what
Yeah.
activates us.
That's good. I like that. Well, let me pull out the card and see what
Yeah.
else we have. So, Ignis or fire. But what is passion? What are emotions? There is the source of fire, there is the fullness of energy. A man who is not on fire is nothing. He is ridiculous.
Mm,
He's two-dimensional. He must be on fire even if he does make a fool of himself. A
mm,
flame must burn somewhere, otherwise no light shines. There is no warmth, nothing. That's C.G. Jung. In the realm of alchemy, the element of fire is the most fundamental as it transforms everything it touches. The alchemist was, above all else, a fire tender, using various stoves, ovens, and bellows with which to control it, turning up here, turning it down there. Fire brings warmth, it brings light, it purifies, and unchecked, it has the power to burn and destroy anything in its path. Only when Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gave it to mortals were they able to survive as individuals and rebuild their own worlds.
mm,
Fire is the element associated with energy, activity, creativity, assertiveness, and passion. Rage, hate, and anger are considered fiery emotions. Despite its dangerous, wild nature, we need that inner fire to move us forward. And to keep the momentum going, the flame must be continually fed. The alchemist spoke of the fire as a baby that needed constant attention. This
mhm.
was the most important task of all, above any experiment at hand. Has your inner fire grown cold or is it thriving? What can you do to boost and sustain its energy? Some advice from the Sufi poet Rumi. Set your life on fire. Seek those who fan your flames.
And that aspect, when you're saying that, what the key takeaway, if people don't remember anything else from our conversation, I think is to think about that this is not a 2-year period where you can turn your back on the fire. It
Mm.
requires tending. And there's two elements in that wheel that transform everything they touch: water and fire, right? And when you go down to the ocean, we both live near the ocean, you can't go down to the water and turn your back on the ocean, right? It's a source of calm, it's a source of beauty, it's a source of life, but it also requires our reverence. It requires that we're paying attention. And so
Mm.
these next 2 years with fire, very much like water, requires that we tend ourselves, the area environments that we're in, and that we are present. I think it requires mindfulness. It even makes me think of when during COVID, we watched a lot of these like survival shows, like Alone, or all these different, naked
They're trying to learn how to survive.
And that kind of one of the things that really stood out to me when you were talking about this was like the importance of, and in our modern world, we've just kind of grown used to this idea that we can just go in our kitchen and turn on fire to cook our food or have electricity to light our world when it's dark outside. But when you are in a survival situation, like fire, if people can't get a fire started, they're not going to have water, they're not going to have food, they're not going to survive, right? And then once they get that fire started, it's like their whole life becomes one of the people in that survival situation. Their whole job is tending the fire, right? And it's like we have forgotten that skill of tending fire in our modern world because so many of our conveniences allow for that to happen. But in terms of being alchemists of our own lives, our spiritual practices, it's a really important practice to be tending our own fire, to be paying attention. So I think of these next 2 years as a real time of focus and mindfulness that's going to help us to remember that necessity of fire tending.
So it's 2 years of fire in a row.
2 years of fire. We're going to have a fire horse year and then a fire goat year. In the Chinese system, you have a yang year, then a yin year, then a yang year, then a yin year. I would call this particular time a wildfire energy, which requires our full attention. Okay. The year is a fire year. That's fire energy. It's also a yang year. And the essence of yang years is fire. Yin years are water, yang years are fire. So you've got 2 layers of fire. Then you have the horse. The horse coming in, horse's essential essence in and of itself is also fire. And then you have a year, this very unique lunar cycle that we're going to be starting. This lunar cycle, because the Chinese calendar starts based on the lunar cycle, and it kind of varies every year between January and February, depending on the moon. This particular year, the lunar cycle starts and ends on a solar eclipse, which is very interesting. That doesn't always happen. Lunar cycles don't always align with solar eclipses. We also have midway through the year a very significant lunar eclipse, but we have beginning and ending this year is a solar eclipse. So these particular years are called Ring of Fire years. So now we have 4 layers of fire, and then we are living in a fire country with, at this particular time, Donald Trump is a fire dog.
Oh.
So we have actually 6 layers of fire.
It's not a ring of fire, it's rings of fire.
It is almost like a target symbol, rings upon rings upon rings. So it's going to be ruled by the sun. It is requiring everybody to be paying attention to what's happening. And it's a year that's going to transform every single person it touches. We are going to be different by the end of this next year. And it's going to be the kind of thing that's necessary. I think even though that's scary, it's also really good.
Yeah.
You know? So there's a lot of fire, but it also means like amazing growth, amazing activity, amazing transformation, like a rearranging of everything.
I'm getting some encouraging ideas. Do you mind if I share what's coming up for me? This is like a whole other thing talking about Greek mythology. And one of my favorite stories is a story of Chiron, the wounded healer, who was half man, half horse. He was a centaur. And he was orphaned. He was also a son of Zeus because Zeus had a lot of children.
Yeah. Exactly.
In all strange kinds of forms that he raped their moms in. But he wasn't as fiery as the other centaurs who were warriors. He was more of a sensitive type because he had these early issues potentially. But he was raised as a poet and a healer and a scientist. And he had a soft spot for humans. And he saw that Prometheus, who was the god of fire, had taken fire from the realm of the gods down to the people and allowed people to have fire so they could tend to themselves. Prometheus ended up being punished by the gods by being tied up to a rock, and then eagles would eat his liver every day for eternity. They did not want the people having their personal power. So then the story of Chiron as the wounded healer, we have him in astrology, something that we use, but the idea is that he, in that story, decided, because he had been wounded and because he was also immortal, he would always have this painful wound. So he decided to sacrifice himself in the place of Prometheus. Then the gods had grace upon Chiron. It's quite Christ-like situation, actually,
Yeah.
right? And then they turned him into part of the stars of the heavens. My point in telling that is that this healing horse came in and continued to allow the people to have their fire
Yeah.
and brought in change in that way. And also next year is the Chiron return of Chiron, since it's been discovered 50 years ago.
And also, we are living through the United States' Chiron return is Chiron in Aries. So again, Aries is also fire. So
It's interesting to pull the horse in from
yes,
there too, even though it's not Chinese. I think it
totally,
fits our story of
totally.
ultimately we don't have to turn our back on fire because we'll know how to tend them individually. And I'm seeing
Absolutely.
that happening so much in, what's going on in the world right now. These people are recognizing, like, wait a second, I'm angry and I want to protect my family, and I'm going to take care of my fire.
Yes,
And that's what
absolutely.
the powers that be do not want us to have.
Absolutely.
Healing is letting us have our fire.
100%. And also, when you think about people coming, so like it's almost like zoom in and then zoom out, right?
Hmm.
Especially when we have that instinct around fire. Humans have a need for it, but a fear around it. It's a primal feeling that it brings up in us, right? But when we think about, having had a background in intercultural communications as well, like the United States is the most individualistic countries in the world.
Really?
90% of world cultures are collectivistic, only 10% are individualistic, and the United States is number one.
Hmm.
But think about this idea of the whole world traditionally, over the last 220 years or whatever, has come to the US to find their own personal fire,
Hmm.
right? You have world cultures coming from all these collective cultures coming to the US, and it's like the American dream is in its essence, this idea of like my own spark, my own idea, my
Right to free speech
yes.
and
And so this
expression.
element
Hmm.
of like the highest vibration of that is like, oh wow, when I did intercultural communications and I helped people learn to speak English, right? I taught people English as well. It was so amazing to watch people find their own particular personal voice in English that they could certain things they couldn't express personally because there really literally wasn't the language for it in American English existed for them to be able to articulate their own personal fire.
Hmm.
The downside of that is if you become so me focused, right?
Hmm.
You're losing the collective fire that we all need to survive. And kind of tying back in those shows that I was watching, one of the most difficult shows was to survive was Alone. Because alone, you're literally alone. So you're the only person having to tend your own fire, find your own water, do all these things in these survival situations. The other ones, like Naked and Afraid, a lot of times they're with a group of people and they have
Hmm.
other people that can help. And I think that in terms of a collective karmic lesson for the United States, this fire year, I think is going to teach us tend our own fires and find our collective of people around us to help us survive, right? Help us survive this cycle, help us to alchemize this cycle, help us to
Hmm.
transform the energy that's become too individually focused. So it's a necessary, in my opinion, and I don't even think it's my opinion, I think the world would agree. It's a necessary change that needs to happen in our country, right? When you're not fire tending, you're a danger to others and yourself.
Hmm.
And we need that practice personally and collectively. So the universe is
Right on time.
right on time teaching us. Then that isn't that very much like, we talked a lot about Chiron return. Chiron return is kind of like, okay, all these coping mechanisms that you had, are they
Yeah.
working? Time to
Yeah.
reevaluate them.
Right. Right.
That's the
Right.
midlife crisis, right? It's like,
Hmm.
is this working or not? Time to reevaluate
What
your
hasn't been healed so that you can actually move into your purpose completely,
yeah,
or at least more completely, right? I don't know if we're ever completely anything.
100%.
Well,
100%.
tell me a little bit more about the past now. You're talking about what you see in this year, but maybe for the audience that's interested in the cycles of these elements that go every couple of years, can you just give us a light sparkling maybe of history over what that might have looked like in our recent past?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, um, I would start what I think is interesting and about these particular tools. And like I said, I feel like that the Eastern systems still have these tools intact, right? But all of our ancestors lived their lives on these elemental wheels. You know, it was part of being a human to understand the cycles of the earth and the elements. It was part of being, and it still is part of being a female to understand our own cycles, right? And this used to be this used to just be part of being human. And I do think that there's an aspect of we need to return to that, our humanity in that way, to understand the cycles, to understand ourselves, because we've lost that in our modern world to the detriment of ourselves and the earth. So these systems exist in the West, but they have largely been dismantled. And I think that these Eastern systems have kept them intact. And that's why I value them as a way of reconstructing my own ancestral practices. I want to say that, right? My own ancestral traditions of like, how can I put this back together? I would say that an important thing to remember is if you think about these cycles, they kind of, we already think about this in terms of time, seconds, you know, minutes, days, hours, days, months, years, eras, empires, you know, they're all layers and layers and layers of cycles of time. I'm going to start with actually 2020 because I think that this is a significant.
That's a year that we all remember.
Yes, this is a significant cycle change, and in this particular, and this is a.
And I think that was around the time, I'm just going to say, as your friend, I feel like that was the time you started getting really excited about Chinese astrology. I remember you sending me some stuff. That said, 2020.
2020. So, and I would say my own personal journey, it was actually 12 years ago in the year of the horse when I really discovered my own animal. My animal, I'm a tiger, a wood tiger. And after my father's passing that I discovered, there was a Chinese parade going by after he had passed, and it was the year of the horse. And I was like, what's that? You know, and I was curious about it.
And that was what year?
12 years ago. So that was 2014.
Oh, 12 years ago. That's right. Because it was every 12 years, of course.
Yes. And so that was a horse cycle. It wasn't a fire horse. It was a wood horse. But that was when I first understood my, you know, my own particular animal and then understood this larger cycle. But in 2020, all of us, kind of like a wake up call, were very focused on what the hell is going on. Okay. In the world, in our lives. We all became very aware that we had a collective responsibility or identity, as well as our own personal responsibility in that time. If we combine Chinese with Vedic systems, because they both keep track of the elements, I'm going to say this particular thing that happened in 2020, two things that are really significant that happened. In the Vedic traditions, they would say that the element of wood in the Chinese astrology is the element of air in the Vedic system. And in the Vedic system, they talk about empires. And so they're larger wheels of time. So most empires are around 220 to 240 year cycles of time. The United States rose during an earth cycle. The Industrial Revolution, the building of the suburbs, you know, the whole 120 years was very much of a building cycle. That cycle ended. We went from the earth cycle to an air cycle in December 21st in 2020. And that was a shift. It kind of makes me think of that Stevie Nicks song, Landslide. That felt like a landslide moment where the earth ended and air came and everything that, you know, the air started to erode some of that.
People started getting sick in December, or was it just December you said? Yeah.
And so now we started a 220 year cycle of air. So now we are in that. That's the larger, like cosmic empire cycle.
Hot air.
Hot air. So this is the first air. This is the first fire cycle within that larger air cycle, which is also why I'm calling it a wildfire year, because when so things are going to happen.
It's so alchemical.
So alchemical. Like all of these things are so alchemical.
Yes.
And this is not just in the Chinese. This is in all of the ancients. All of the esoteric traditions are talking about the.
Well, we can see, you know, I think we can all recognize the alchemy of like, okay, heat melts, you know, hopefully. but actually when you see it in these larger elemental ways beyond our history understanding is fascinating.
So then we've got a larger cosmos, an empire cosmos, and most empires rise and fall along with the element that they're in. Like, for example, Rome, and having Rome behind me here. Rome rose in an
Mm-hmm.
fire cycle and then fell when fire went to air, right?
Mm-hmm.
United States rose in a earth cycle and is, I would say our empire is falling
Mm-hmm.
in this earth to air
Power.
transition.
Yeah.
But the particular in the Chinese system now, let's get to 2020. So we've got the larger empire. The empires are changing, empires are shifting. We have now the individual year. That was a metal year. So it was a metal rat year. And we had 2 years of metal. The energy of metal in the Chinese system is actually, and you're this also,
I'm metal.
is gold. Not just metal, it's gold. But
Ooh.
the elemental, and that's very alchemical, right?
Yeah.
The metal year is, um, but the metal's core identity is constricting.
Mm.
So let's think about this. Those 2 years, 2020 and 2021, the entire world
It was constricted.
was constricted.
Mm.
And every one of the elements has a function that it's doing in this system. It was making us all kind of pause and go, what are we doing? Stop. Like a little bit like chain energy, a little bit
Mm-hmm.
like some handcuffs. It was a gold rat. And in rat years, in the Chinese system, rat actually wins the race. That's a whole other story since we're big on elements right now. The rat year, interestingly, rat years have been synonymous with like the bubonic plague was in a rat year, right? So there's been
Whoa,
pestilence.
really? Oh
Yes.
my gosh, this is
So
so
all of this
cool.
is just pattern recognition. It's a way of understanding how, history doesn't repeat, but
Mhm.
history does rhyme, right? So there's an element of cycles and repetition that happen.
I'm understanding the Saturn in your chart today. Very in tune with the cycles of time.
Yes, with the cycles of time, right?
Hmm.
So we had so we had 2 years of constraint, 2 years of lockdown, literally lockdown with a metal
Constricted. Yeah.
chain,
Hmm.
right? Then after
Yeah.
that, the next 2 years, we had
That's
a
22 and 23.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So 22 and 23 was a water cycle. And so you had 2020 was a metal rat. Then 2021 was a metal ox. And the ox was kind of, maybe the rat couldn't get out of that box, but the ox was like, I'm getting out. That gives birth to a water tiger year. And we had 2 years of water. 2023 was a water tiger year. 2024 was a water rabbit year.
Rabbit. Hmm.
And that water cycle, even actually we moved to the area that we had tons of rain. Actually, we had some storms, we had hurricanes, we had a remarkable amount of rain those 2 years,
That
right?
was 24 was when we had the floods in on the East Coast, right?
2023 and 2022 and 2023. We haven't gotten 2024 yet.
Oh, okay.
Those were water years.
Okay.
And those were years that were kind of like, especially when I think about the water tiger year, it was like the water was like not that particular year, 2022 was kind of like everybody was like, I am not wearing the mask anymore. I am not going to be chained. It's like water broke through.
Yeah, everybody wanted to kind of be out and I felt like there was a lot of growth in terms of like, I just saw kind of businesses coming back and people engaging, and there was a lot more sort of, I guess, emotional connection maybe, which I would consider a watery thing maybe.
Absolutely. Water, yeah, connections. Water is a connector of the world, right?
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And the tiger energy was like, okay, enough.
Your
Enough of
water,
these
and
things.
we re-regulate each other with our watery
100%.
energy, right?
And we found our voices again. If you think about during that time during COVID, people
Hmm.
they were
Hmm.
constrained even on their mouth. What is the tiger known for? It's roar,
Roaring.
right? So
And they
people
can
kind
swim.
yes, and waters can swim, tigers can swim. So we came out of that. We're like, okay, that's enough. We're gonna find our voice. We're gonna find our
That
strength.
giant tigers
We're gonna
behind you.
connect back to communities because we were all kind of individually in our cells, right? Kind of
Mhm.
locked in a cell. This was the harder vibration of metal. Obviously, there's a higher vibration of gold, which can be the preciousness
Yeah,
and the
yeah, yeah.
beauty resource. There's obviously, but that particular time frame was difficult for all of us, right? And for some people even more so. But then once water came along, I was like, let's connect back with each other. We need to connect with the people in our
Right,
life. We need to
right.
find our voice. Then we had that water rabbit, which was kind of like, yang year, tiger and a rabbit are a perfect example. Right after COVID, we had a water yang tiger year. We're like, get me out of here, you know. And then the next year we had a little bit of a calmer year. Oh, this it's still water, but it's a softer, it's like kind of like a lake or a stream, you know. We've got a yin water rabbit, much more easy, much more soft. But then right after that, 2024, we entered into a wood dragon year. And that was all that water created all of this ability. Wood is like the plants and the greenery for things to grow, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have these two wood years, wood dragon year in 2024, 2025, wood snake year. Um, and the dragon is very much, you know, that's when Trump won. It's kind of the interesting aspect of the dragon too, is that everything in the East that is the hero in the West is the villain and vice versa.
Really?
Yes. So in Chinese astrology and in Chinese system, Eastern systems in general, the dragon's actually the hero. The dragon's the great mother, the dragon's the protector, the
That's
dragon's
so
the emperor.
interesting.
But in the West, the dragon is the thing that has to be slayed, right?
Huh.
The dragon is the thing that has to be conquered. The dragon's the bad guy, right? So it's very interesting, and that's part in terms of shadow work. It's really important for these East-West archetypes for us to look at the things we vilify, because from the other side of the world, those are the heroes,
Fascinating.
right? So that we've got 2024, we had, you know, Trump coming into office, and I would say he's a difficult dragon for the United States. To me, he's not a dragon, but you know, he was kind of not an easy force. And then now we're entering into 2 years of fire again. And the fire is going to burn all that wood that was growing and building up, keeping, and the fire helps to counteract the overgrowth that happens when you have a water to wood cycle, because you've got all this water that creates all of these new growth. And if there's no fire there, if there's no fire cycle, all of that growth will overgrow, will overtake the environment, and will not allow things to be in balance. All of these elements are keeping things in balance. The final thing about the snake year, we didn't mention the snake. I mean, snake years are the underworld. You've got all of the Epstein files coming up in this time. And mind you, we're still in the snake year. It's not till February 17th, 2026 that we enter into the horse year. So you have all of some of the darker abuses that have come out in 2025 this year. But then also the higher vibration is the rising above, feminine power, the alchemy. And the snake is also a vilified aspect in the West that is considered the symbol of awakening in the East. Right? So you've got two bad guys, according to Western views, the dragon and the snake. But in the East, they're actually the protector and the liberator, the Kundalini awakening. So it's all how you look at it.
I do feel a little of that constriction, maybe because I'm a metal pig. I'm all like,
Yeah.
oh, there it comes again, you know.
And I mean, especially so depending, what I think about, so as I've been working with the system really for 12 years, and in 2020 I had the time. 2020 stopped me, kind of like, you know, when people maybe go to jail and they're in a cell and they're like, they start reading.
Yeah.
They go back to school, you know, they have the time, you know,
Yeah.
the higher vibration of the jail cell that we're
It's
all
time apart, right?
time apart to.
Do it.
So I have been working with the systems for 12 years, but I really like dove into them more in 2020 because I had the time,
Sure.
right? And I was trying not to go crazy in that little jail cell, you know, and had the time to focus and go deep with all these particular things. But since then, what has really come to my mind, and I think it's important for us as Westerners to really sit with, is like, we can't change the cycles of time, right? We can't change the cycles, but we can position ourselves to be in a better position with them. So your particular, do you mind if we go into yours?
No, sure. You can talk about that as much as you want to.
Your particular element and animal in the Chinese system is the gold. Metal is gold in that system. Pig. And we've talked about this before, pig or boar. Depends on how you want to see it. But if you think about it in terms of the West, it's almost like the golden piggy bank.
I love how you put a nice light on being
Yes!
a pig.
Yes, And the golden piggy bank, you're kind of this golden piggy bank energy, which means you have
My kids seem to think so.
yes, which means you have a preciousness to you. You know, gold is a precious metal. It is a metal that is very much susceptible, and this might be a little bit of the fear in you. I mean, we all have fear with fire, but particularly gold could feel this. Gold is the most susceptible to the elements. So it is very sensitive, and you know this. I mean, you know this in your life. You're very sensitive to your environment. There's also a preciousness about you. You're a treasure.
I'm a Goldilocks. I do not like extreme.
Really, you're something that people like are, you know, longing for, looking after, you know, wanting, you know, that's part of some of the fame in your chart. You know, you have people coming to you through your art or through the previous roles that you were in as an actress. There's kind of like a golden,
That's nice to say.
a golden aspect
Golden
to you.
girl.
Yes, a golden girl, exactly.
That's my
Fame.
goal.
There's a fame there. There's a beauty. There's a lot of beauty with the gold, very Venusian, right?
Aw.
So all of that energy is amazing. But gold is not iron. Gold is not steel. It is not like, so anything that touches gold affects the gold,
Oh.
right? Then you have, and that's its strength and its weakness, right? That's why people use gold for jewelry because it's so easily moldable into these beautiful shapes. You know, you can easily mold gold. You can't easily, we're not walking around with, you know, iron rings because it's very hard to make iron, you know, move. So even though you have that metal energy to you, it's very mutable, right? It's a mutable metal. I would think of it that way. Then the pig energy. The pig in the East is actually people specifically try to get pregnant on pig years, specifically gold pig years, because they consider it lucky. Pigs don't have to work as hard. People invest in you. Money comes to you. You know, literally, especially golden pig. Money comes to you. People invest to you. That doesn't mean your life's perfect or easy, but things will come out of the blue. People want to invest in your work. People want to, you know, see your work as valuable in the world, and they want to invest. They want to be part of it.
I hope my audience is listening.
Exactly. I mean, you're a perfect person to be an artist. It's like you have beautiful things that people want to buy and see as valuable.
The arts. Yeah.
So that's a perfect description of your life. And it's this aspect of pigs are very, you know, they're non-threatening, right? If you think of the little, except if you have a boar with its, you know, with its babies, except for its babies, it's going to protect. But in general, it's not the most intimidating animal.
Yeah, it's cool just chilling in the mud.
Yes, and also pigs are very much like peacocks. They're alchemists. They literally can eat, like on a traditional farm, anything. They can eat anything. Also, rats can eat anything. Rats, pigs, and peacocks in nature can eat anything and turn it into nutrition. They are like nature's alchemists. They can take whatever is given to them, whatever scraps, and turn it into substance, turn it into beauty, turn it into something. So you give Allison the scraps, she's going to make something amazing with it. And it's your collage work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you nourish others with the scraps of life. Even if you're in a place where you're in scarcity and you have some scraps, it's like, oh, no problem for Allison. She's going to make something beautiful with it. It's like it's a natural ability that you have. So those are all really high vibrational aspects. Low vibration. You have Elon Musk, who's also a golden pig. Clearly that man is hoarding wealth. Right? He's using his natural ability to hoard for himself, to take all the money for himself. Instead of being this benevolent piggy bank, he could use his money, all this money that clearly comes to him, and be the most amazing philanthropist of all time. He could invest, you know, he could support others. He could create, he could end world hunger. Right? But he's gone into a low vibration of that, where he's hoarding for himself. He's misusing his power. And along comes a fire cycle. And what's going to happen? It's going to touch, I believe, him particularly, because, you know,
because he needs some transformation.
He needs some transformation, and that fire is part of the counteracting of the overgrowth, right? So for you, Allison, in particular, as a metal pig, golden pig, piggy bank. We'll call you golden piggy bank. You're gonna just have to be aware in this fire year of, just like you check the ocean before you go on a walk, you need to check yourself, tune into that hypersensitivity that you have about yourself, and really trust your instincts. Is this a good time to do this? Is this a good time to do that? Expect transformation. Expect that you will be molded and shaped. And I'm sure I would say for you, you might be activated really to do some
I feel
art.
I hope so.
Yeah, you might be reshaped. Your work in the world might reshape and re-alchemize and reform into something even, different than you would have ever expected in this time. You might take a new form. And if you can embrace that fire as like, this is shaping me to change me into something beautiful, then you can come into the higher vibration of it. Or you can go into fear and feel like, because you're not Elon Musk hoarding, you're using your energy, even this podcast, to draw all the wealth of people and resources that come into your life and share them with the world.
Yeah, I don't like to hoard. I don't have enough room for it in my life or in my house. Well, this is actually a good time for me to bring up the artwork that you chose. And by the way, thank you for giving me that personal little reading. And anybody listening, I'm going to put the notes also in her Shannon's website in the show notes, because she also does readings for animals for you and your family, which I had done before with my kids, and it was so interesting. And I think it really gave me a lot of support this year, because I am apparently the I have to keep them fed, she said, because I'm the pig, and one of them's a tiger, and one of them's a snake, and as long as they're not hungry, I'm safe.
And that's why they have you as their mom, right? Because they need food. You know what I'm saying? Like,
it was so simple. It was more than food, though, but it did kind of keep my eyes open that they have, they're more predatory in some ways than I am. And in the same way you're telling me to watch my back with the fire, I was watching my back with the animals. So it was helpful. But I'll put notes about that in there. And I want to give...
They're also your protectors. I'll say that. At one point in their life, your two children are going to be the ones that protect you.
Yeah. Well, they protect me in a lot of ways that we don't understand, I think, still. Okay, I'm going to pull up the artwork that you shared. Here we go. And you'll see that it's like the same colors and shape of the one that I chose for you, Shannon. So tell me what this is.
This is Dali, who's one of my favorite. He's probably, I'm not sure he's my favorite, but he's top 5 favorite artists. And I really love Dali's work. A lot of Dali's work came during World War II and during the rise of fascism in the world, which is a pattern repeating in our country. Some of his best, most avant-garde, most amazing art came from that time period where he escaped. Actually, he lived in Monterey, California for a few years and did all kinds of avant-garde work.
Was he in exile in the States?
Yeah, he was. He was in exile, and he was basically dreaming, the existing world structure that he was part of was falling. And he was dreaming and envisioning the new world. And I love that. And I think that art is very apropos for this time. Artists envision the new world. Poets and artists and singers and anybody that's an artist of any kind is re-envisioning the new world, right? The new way forward. They're the prophets. And so I love this work because I think it's very representative of the work that he did in the world, that it's this phoenix rising above. And
the phoenix seems to have like a body of a woman and a head potentially of a peacock.
Yes, the alchemist.
And then the bottom of the body that's all in fire creates almost like it feels like an oven sort of to me.
Yeah, and it's the philosopher's, it's kind of it's considered the philosopher's stone, or the first, the atom aspect.
Okay.
And that's what I've read, some of the description about it. How I see this is, to me, when I look at this work, especially if you think of inside of her sacral area, her womb space is Adam, kind of, right? I really feel like that this represents to me very much Lilith in the story. It's this idea of Lilith in the original story of Genesis is the one that left the garden because she wasn't going to be treated as an equal. She went and created her own life, right? She kind of wasn't going to be constrained. She wasn't going to be confined, and she found her own way forward. I think of Lilith very much as an alchemist, So when I see this phoenix, I think of it very much as a Lilith, kind of unwilling to be shackled to traditional roles, very much the alchemy of the peacock, and a lot of growth through fire. In that system too, I'm a wood tiger. And so yeah, I mean, I'm also going to be affected by a lot of fire these next 2 years. So I'm trying to be prepared, right? Like, what do I need to be control burning in my
Put lots
life?
of water on yourself all the time.
What, like, what are the dead branches in my life I need to cut off,
Right.
right? Like, what is old growth that needs to be shed? And this snake year has been helping us all to do that. If we've been paying attention in this year, the snake year is like, hey, time for you to shed those old things so that when the next fire year cycle comes along, you're not going to be in danger of such a great burn to the point that's unnecessarily painful because you've done that pruning, that self pruning. So I'm really approaching this year as like, okay, I've gone around, I'm shedding, and I continue to shed every week. I'm looking through my life like, what needs to go? What needs to go? Fire's coming. What needs to go? What dead branches? What is
This would
no longer?
probably be a good couple of weeks to do like some dry brushing or
Yes.
something, just as a ritual statement as we move forward and leave the past. Even if you don't have to mentally think about it, it'd be kind of a cool way to practice
And
some
also
somatic
water.
feelings.
Really practical thing to do is so when you have a lot of and this is the idea of like yin and yang, and this is just basics. I think of being a human. Like if it's cold outside, you don't normally go get an ice cream cone, right? Because it's already enough cold energy outside and you feel cold. Your body doesn't need more cold things. Next year's a lot of fire, fire, fire. What do we need? We need water. We need to be taking ritual baths. We need to figure out how we can pull away. How can we be balancing with water? Going to the ocean would be a really powerful thing to do. I even think about how metal is for you, Allison, how metal is shaped is through fire and through water, right? So the goldsmith, you know, the universe is the goldsmith reshaping you, but then it doesn't continue to melt and melt and melt the fire. It dips it in the water so that it can take some form, right? And let it cool down so it doesn't completely have it liquefy into a pool. And then it brings it out of the water and then it shapes it a little bit more and then dipping in the water. So
That's
ritual
interesting.
baths of water and water practices, being next to the water, going.
That's pretty already part of my my routine. Phew, I got that part down.
I see that kind of water, even though I mean that's probably the blue flame, but I see that water in that.
Yeah, I think blue, when we see that, it does make us think of water. And I see it in mine too. I'm going to show you these together and how similar they
Yes.
are. So now I'm showing the card that I showed Shannon earlier, and then the one she brought in next to it. And it's so interesting because they have exactly the same colors in them, the same
Mm,
flow. Even the peacock's headdress seems to be going out in a sun star. They both have a bird at the same kind of an elevated bird in the neck, kind of the neck bottle area, and then there's a square behind yours, but there's a circle behind mine. They're very similar,
absolutely.
and yeah, it's just so interesting to me. The color, it's just fascinating. Even that little, there's even the little triangle which represents fire, upright triangle, and an
Wow.
alchemical symbol. You can even see like just the same color, even if it's drawn right over the bottom part of yours. I think it's remarkable.
I see that like little glass, what is that called? That it's in a little bottle, just a glass bottle, but
Like
it
a
has
vessel or
like
something,
a
a bottle.
vessel.
Uh-huh.
And there is fire all around. This is the solar. I mean, this is very representative of this year. There's fire all around.
Mhm.
There's the sun's behind this little water vessel, but it's protected, right? And it makes me think of your metal is kind of like a little protective vessel,
Mhm.
and it has this water on the inside. I think of even in the Western astrology, you have that
Mhm.
Cancer moon,
Yeah. And
right?
that's how
No,
our bodies
Cancer
are
moon,
too. I
Cancer
think our
rising.
bodies have this,
Yes.
we have the fire inside of, well, the alchemizing element of our stomachs, for example, burning off the calories and all the things that we do with this oven. But ultimately, we're just vessels of life that are going through changes all the time. We're water bodies
Yeah.
mostly.
But it's not like when I look at this vessel, I don't think of it. It's like, yes, there's fire all going all, the sun's rays are going everywhere. But it has its own little protective,
Hmm.
and then it has fire on the inside, but it doesn't seem to be consuming
Hmm.
it. That's my point. It almost feels like
Yeah,
a
I feel like that's kind of what you're saying about what movie you're into, like harnessing the energy where and finding it. And that's what we do with archetypal work. Like, oh, it's a tiger year. What does my inner tiger feel like? What does a tiger mean
yes.
to me? I often even just look at National Geographic videos and read about what they do to give me a feeling sometimes because I'm just such a mental person. Some people can go straight into the feeling. But I think animals are so great to work with. And now that you're describing elements also, I think they're just so accessible for us.
Absolutely.
Whereas sometimes when we talk about mythological figures, and even when we were talking about Chiron earlier, I love the story, but not everybody knows that language. So they have to kind of, lean into it. But if you say, oh, I know what the energy of a horse is and all the things that a horse does, or I know what fire does, it's really easy to like leave the mind and go straight into some almost of energetic awareness of that.
And we didn't talk about the horse enough, but I do feel like I just want to say this one thing. Do I have enough time to say one thing
Yeah,
about
go
the
ahead.
horse? I've heard a lot of people talking about the the horse and online, and I think that's great. But they're not talking about the fire enough, which is why I spend a lot of time talking about the fire, because the elements, in my opinion, are the most important part. Then the animal is the carrier of those elements,
Hmm.
right? So a water horse here feels very different than a fire horse here. And because of all the layers of fire that I said before, this is not a horse that you're gonna ride, okay? This is like a wild bucking horse. This is a horse, and it makes me actually think about this time that I went to Iceland, and it was the first time I've ever seen like horses that are wild. In Iceland, the horses that are there are the original horses of the Vikings that have never been mixed and interbred with any other horse, and they live, the people take care of the animals, but they live wild on the Icelandic land, which is the land of fire and ice, right? And they when need shelter or whatever, they come back with humans, but they are very like running wild on the hills. And so they're living in relationship with humans, but they are very wild. So they're not like a horse that you just see here in the United States. They are horses in their original power and strength. And I'll never forget, there was this gated area near the road where they don't live in pens at all. They run free over thousands and thousands of miles, but there are gates that protect them from, the roads and things like that. And we were standing there, and these two wild horses walked up to us. And I had this immediate feeling of like, a fear of like I've never experienced a horse that was wild, right? Coming at me. I knew there was a fence, but it was a very flimsy fence compared to the strength of this
The big
muscular viking
animals.
horse.
Hmm.
And then it was like this feeling of like and like igniting of like seeing this horse so free, so untamed, so in its original state made me feel my own sense of wildness of like this is what it looks like to be fully embodied and not limited, not harnessed, wild in my environment, in harmony with my environment. And so it came up to us, and it was like kind of like, I'll let you look at me, you know? So it was like interacting, but with still
Had
there
the
was no,
sovereignty to it.
yes, no broken spirit. It had not been broken. So it was interacting with us in this like really beautiful embodied way where it was like I can have relationship with you without losing my wildness. And it was so inspiring. So being around something so wild and so untamed made me feel like, wow, that's what it looks like and feels like. So yes, there's always this element of like, ooh, this thing is bigger than me. But the feeling of aliveness that I felt in its presence, I still remember. And that's what this year is bringing us. This is
Mm.
a year that's going to remind us of that untamed, that's part of why my business is called Wild Heart Pilgrimage and rewilding the soul through wonder, because it's like finding that wild awe and right relationship with our environment is really liberating. There's so much
Mhm.
liberation this year. I didn't need to ride that horse, and you can ride Icelandic horses, and I'm sure that there are some that are trained to be ridden. But I actually was more impacted by seeing this horse in this wild environment
Mhm.
than I was probably if I would have ridden it. It was
Mhm.
almost like
It
it was
brought
a
a
mirror.
message.
It was a
Hmm.
mirror. So I think this year is going to be a wild horse year. That's a beautiful, liberatory, transformative experience for us
I love that.
to come back into right relationship with our environment, our
Hmm.
place in the world, each other, without breaking of the spirit.
Mm.
out being harnessed to the point of losing our own fire, our own inner flame.
Yeah.
And that's the gift of this year. But if we think this is just something that if we come at it with this, like, I'm going to ride you, I'm going to whip this, that's not happening. That's not happening
Right.
this year. So let's expect it to be wild and not be surprised when it is, and then be inspired by its wildness instead of trying
Mm.
to control something that we simply cannot control. And
Yeah,
that's
that's
the gift.
amazing. Yeah.
That's the gift of the horse.
Wow, gosh. Well, thank you for saying all that because that's very igniting. Before we go though, I want you to tell people what you're offering. You have a couple things coming up, in particular to celebrate the year of the horse coming. So,
Because this is such a big year, I feel like it's probably going to be one of the bigger years in our decade. These next 2 years, but specifically next year, or this year that we're in, 2026, is going to be a big year. I felt like I really wanted to make sure that I was having opportunities for people to do ritual work and be in ceremony. I'm also a ceremonial artist
she
as
does
well.
very beautiful ceremonies and gatherings.
Yeah, so I do like kind of like living art experiences, interactive
Hmm.
art ceremony experiences of the elements and the vibration of the year. So I'm doing a Year of the Wildfire horse ceremony in Encinitas, where I live, and it's going to be on January 30th and 31st, or I should say, you can come to either
Okay.
one. And I'm doing fire horse readings the entire year because that's really important. You know, you may not feel like you need it until halfway through the year, you know?
Sure.
And
Sure.
the readings are just a great way of asking, are there resources? I try to make it really practical. Allison's experienced them
Yeah.
too. Finding the higher vibration so we don't kind of go into our lower. I would say that those particular readings show us like kind of our instincts when we're backed in a corner. And this year we may feel backed in a corner by that fire because fire is going to
Mhm.
be the predominant force. How are we going to react? I feel like this is a year that needs a lot of preparation and mindfulness.
How can they find more about you?
Yeah, wildheartpilgrimage.com is my,
Wild Heart Pilgrimage.
and on Instagram, wild.heart.pilgrimage.
Okay.
And then on February 17th, which is actually the solar eclipse and the year of the horse. For anybody that can't meet with me in person for ceremony, we're going to do a lot of drumming and face painting and kind of activating our own inner wildness and warrior aspect. Some weaving. It's going to be a really powerful experience. But if you can't come to that and you want to be in person online, February 17th on the solar eclipse, we're going to be doing a contemplative candle carving ceremony where we are kind of carving our own candles for the year that we light to remember the importance of this year of tending our sacred fire and doing controlled burns in our life when we need
Yeah.
to evaluate what needs to go, what is holding me back. We will not be lighting our candles on that day because it's a solar eclipse. It's a lot of fire energy, but we will be carving our candles so that we have them ready. Because normally when you have solar eclipses, you don't do ritual work. You understand the impact of the year. But I felt like I wanted to gather people on that day to create almost like their light source, their lamp, their little fire starter for themselves,
Mhm.
and have it for the year. So it's going to be a contemplative time online on the 17th itself on the solar eclipse. But if you don't work with me at all or come to any of my events, I hope that people take away that this is a year to fire tend.
Mm.
That's for the collective good. Like, keep your eye on the fire and you'll be good.
What a relief.
Yeah, take your eye off the fire, you might get a little burned.
Safety first.
Safety first with fire.
Well, thank you for fanning the flames today. This has been really informative, really fun to listen to you and learn from you. And just thank you so much for your time, Shannon.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I wish everyone a wild and safe year. Both and.
We're gonna have it. Yeah.
Wow.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thanks. Bye.